Throughout this season, we're highlighting different podcasts that explore various facets of the Black parenting experience. Raising Rebels is a podcast about oppressed parents raising free children. Each episode, host Nolika Radway has liberating, courageous conversations with real parents. Raising Rebels believes that the work, as parents of color, is to encourage our children to be fully themselves in a society that doesn't always celebrate them. Subscribe to Raising Rebels on the Domino Sound Network. And you probably heard, we hosted the Natal Summit last weekend. If you weren't able to join us, you can watch the recording on our website at natalstories.com/summit. Hey, y'all.
Hey, hey, hey.
I'm Gabrielle Horton.
And I'm Martina Abraham Zalunga. And this is the Natal season finale.
You're listening to Natal.
You're listening to Natal.
You are listening to Natal.
You're listening to Natal, a podcast about having a baby.
Having a baby.
Having a baby while Black.
My name is Micah, and this is my natal story.
My name is Kenya, and this is my natal story.
My name is Shelly, and this is my natal story.
Hi, my name is Cambrisha, and this is my natal story.
Hi.
So guess what, Liz? I am actually telling a story about you and about when I found out I was pregnant with you and when I decided to go to a hospital.
Woo, episode 8. Can you believe it?
Actually, I can't.
No, it's been a journey.
And capped off by the Natal Summit last weekend, which was so amazing.
Yes, shout out to everyone who came through.
We had a chance to bring parents, birth workers, providers, and advocates together, and I really can't wait till we can do that all over again in real life. But real talk, though, we started Natal over a year ago. I mean, not only did we birth a whole ass podcast, but we did so during a pandemic.
And a global uprising on top of everything else.
Yeah, girl, come get your country, please.
Nah, I don't claim it like that. But seriously, this first season has taught us so much about having a baby while Black.
It has. What's been the biggest takeaway for you, Martina?
I mean, I've just been in awe of the birth workers we've met. Their work and insight have completely transformed how I think of pregnancy and birthing. You know, we've talked all season about not being parents and the fear that we have around birthing. Will I get the care I need? Will my child and I be safe? And while I'm not thinking about having a baby anytime soon, I'm happy to say that I'm no longer afraid to do so. I know my options. I know I can advocate for myself. And I just know that there's a whole community of folks advocating for Black birthing parents out there. And that is so empowering.
Ugh, I could not agree more. That advocacy piece that you're mentioning, honestly, I kept thinking about that a lot this season too. I kept asking myself, how can I take all of this new knowledge around pregnancy, birth, and postpartum to support Black families beyond the podcast, right? So, well, I actually decided to become a doula, and I just finished my training.
Yay, congratulations. You are LA County's newest doula. Call up Gabby, y'all. But beyond that, what's been your biggest takeaway?
I mean, when I think about this first season, I'm constantly reminded that birthing isn't a novelty, right? Like, Black people been birthing babies. We've been leading the way as birth workers. Hell, we are the original midwives, doulas, and caretakers of this country.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really been powerful for me to see that we have this rich ancestral lineage that we can tap into. Natal reminds me of that, and the fact that it's our right to define how we experience giving birth and to advocate for ourselves to make it happen, you know?
Preach. Yes, yes, yes. And it's been incredible to hear from our listeners that have come to the same conclusion.
My name is Charlie Williams IV. I'm calling from Brooklyn, New York. My favorite episode this season has got to be Alexis' story. And the reason is specifically because I had never heard someone, who's non-white, I think, having a midwife or doula. And then as a man who hopes to one day soon be a father, to hear how involved Cortez was gave me a lot of hope and a guidebook of how to be an involved partner,
Hi, my name is Mikkel Evans, and I'm calling from Los Angeles, California. I just wanted to share that my favorite episode this season was probably Shelly's. She had me cracking up. It was really refreshing just to hear her being so vulnerable about some of the challenges that she dealt with mentally, feeling isolated. And I think that it's so important to make sure we aren't only checking in on the baby, but also on the mother during the pregnancy and then also after the pregnancy. One of the main takeaways from the podcast overall is that intuition, that speaking to you, telling you everything isn't actually okay. You have to listen to that, and you can't blindly trust providers to have your best interest at heart. You have to be your best advocate.
Hey, Natal. My name is India. I'm a proud Dominican Trinidadian girl from New York. And I'm calling from San Francisco, where I'm currently a medical student studying to become an OB-GYN. And I just wanted to say I am so grateful for the humanity, the advocacy, and the vulnerability that Natal has brought to the experience of Black birthers. These are stories that I will carry with me through my clinical training and my clinical practice. And they've inspired me to think even more critically about my vision for the type of provider and healer that I hope to be. I can't wait for the next season.
We've covered a lot of ground this season. And the main question we tried to answer is, what should care look like for Black birthing parents?
I think we've done a pretty good job of answering that question this season, but we're going to answer it one more time in this episode.
We sure are. Trish Jones is a 28-year-old mom, wife, and doula in Texas. And Democratic Congresswoman Alma Adams of North Carolina is the co-founder of the Black Maternal Health Caucus. And we actually get a chance to hear from them today in our final episode.
I'm still shook that we have a whole Congresswoman on this show.
Yeah, that's also really wild. But it was so great to hear from her.
Together with her and Trish, we'll explore what it means to have autonomous birthing experiences and to be fully supported throughout the whole process. And we'll talk about how to implement successful community-based care models at the national level.
But first, let's start with Trish.
My name is Trish. I live in Dallas, Texas. I'm a new doula. I'm Elisha's mom, and this is my natal story.
Trish's natal journey began in college when she decided to pick up a women's studies minor. This was long before she and her husband, Eli, ever thought about getting pregnant.
So it was my first culture, sex, and childbirth class. And that's where I learned like the statistic that Black women are 4 to 5 times more likely to die during childbirth or during pregnancy complications. And what I heard was I am 3 or 4 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes. The whole class was just like very transformative for me. Coming to birth work was not immediate, but I did know that like I felt like this was going to be my thing. I just knew that I had to get involved some type of way because I distinctly remember when she read that statistic, looking around class like, did anybody else just hear what I heard? I looked around for reactions and it didn't seem like anybody really had one. So that was the moment that I knew that I was going to be involved with birth work.
After graduating, Trish started working in the reproductive justice space as an HIV prevention counselor.
And it was when I was at that job that I got a chance to meet a doula. And I swear she floated into the room. She had her hair wrapped up. She was wearing a really long skirt and she just looked so magical. And I asked her, I said, what do you do? And she said, well, I'm a doula. And I was like, well, what's that? What's that? And she explained it to me that it was a support person for pregnant women. And I was very interested. I started like Googling immediately.
Trish started doula training in March 2019. A month later, her path took a detour.
I was 3 weeks into the coursework. I woke up. It was like a Sunday morning in like the middle of April. And something just told me to take a pregnancy test. I don't know what it was. I just got up and took one. And I had these little cheapy strips from Amazon. And I took one and I'm like scrolling on Instagram. I'm waiting. And I look down at the strip and it's got like the faintest line. And I'm like, what is that? Is that something? I don't know. I'll just take another one. So I took another one and then I looked at it and it was like the faintest line. It was like, you almost couldn't even call it a line. It was like a smudge. So I'm in the bathroom and I'm like starting to sweat because I'm like getting really, really nervous because I've got 2 tests and both of them have something similar to lines on them. So I was probably in the bathroom for about, close to 20 minutes. I had 7 strips in front of me when I was done, and all of them had like lines. So I opened the bathroom door. My husband's in here just like knocked out sleep. He has no idea what's going on. So I wake him up and I'm like, I need you to come look at the strips. I need to make sure like I'm not seeing things, like I'm not having a stroke. Please tell me you can see what I see. And he was like, yeah, they're kind of lines, but they're kind of not. And we should probably just go get a real test. So we went and got a test and like a bunch of candy bars because I was stress eating. I was like, I need some chocolate. I can't. I feel like this is about to say what I think it's about to say. So I took the test and I left it in the bathroom and we're both just sitting in the dining room. Longest 3 minutes of my life. We're sitting in the dining room and we're just waiting. And then the timer on my phone goes off. And I covered the test up with a piece of electric tape. And when I got back, it was like blazing pink, like pregnant. I didn't even take any more tests after that. I was just like, I'm pregnant. And we just kind of sat at the table like, It's like, And like we went to Cheesecake Factory and then that was how I found out I was pregnant. A random Sunday afternoon followed up by Cheesecake Factory. I really didn't have a lot to say. I was excited, but like that was one of the few times in my life where I was like rendered speechless. Cause like, you're doing what it takes to get pregnant. But when you see the line, the realization that you're pregnant starts to like, it just slaps you right in the face. And I was just like, pregnant. I just kept saying it all day. Pregnant.
Yes, y'all, Trish was having a baby. As a new doula in training, she was learning so much about what was happening with her body, what could happen, and about her care options. At times, it felt a little overwhelming trying to process all the new information. But when it came to where she would give birth, Trish didn't think twice.
I made the decision to have a home birth almost immediately. I knew that I didn't like hospitals and I don't like hospitals. I've never had to be hospitalized other than once for an allergic reaction. And my experience is not necessarily bad. They always have a hard time finding my veins for like IVs. And I just have a general distrust of the medical community. And because I was studying to be a doula, like I knew what I would be up against. I had heard so many stories of people I knew or people I know and people I don't know, and they weren't positive. So and I know that some women do elect to have scheduled C-sections and they go to hospitals and they have positive birth experiences. It just wasn't for me. I always knew that I was going to do it at home. And even if I had to transfer to the hospital, I knew that I was going to start at home at the very least.
Congresswoman Alma Adams understands Trish's sentiments firsthand. She represents North Carolina's 12th district, which includes the city of Charlotte. Her passion for Black birthing parents is personal. Her only daughter, Linda, almost died in childbirth over 13 years ago.
I've heard pregnant women say, for example, that they were almost even afraid to go to the hospital, and they wonder what will happen when it's time for them to deliver their child, if they're going to do it at a hospital. I've got to tell you, as a mother and as a grandmother, but mostly also as a mom who had a situation with my own daughter who actually almost lost her life giving birth to my granddaughter Jocelyn, who's now 13. Just very unexpected at the end. She had to have a cesarean. Jocelyn was a preemie. And it was very terrifying. My daughter complained a little bit about pains and things that she was having, and they basically kind of ignored that as she went maybe back and forth to talk to medical professionals and so forth. So it's personal to me. A lot of women are not delivering in hospitals anymore. I don't know. I don't have an answer to it, but I just certainly it's something to be concerned about. I can just remember when I was growing up, people had babies at home.
We'll come back to Representative Adams in a few minutes. Last episode, we talked about home births, including the stigma around them. So it's not surprising that Trish's folks questioned her decision to have one.
My family's reaction, it's sort of a mixed bag. I got a lot of side eyes, just because I don't know anyone in my immediate family or my extended family. There's no one in my friend circle who's ever had a baby at home. I am the first and only one. And so I remember telling my grandma, and she asked me, "Why do you want to do that?" And I was just like, well, I just don't want to go to the hospital. I just want to have my baby at home like they did in the olden days. Like women have been giving birth for thousands of years. And she was just kind of like, well, okay. I got a lot of okays. Okays as in, we'll see how that works out. We'll just like wait and see. I think they were as supportive as they could be because, like I said, they just nobody had ever done it. But I just think when it comes to home birth, a lot of people they don't know what it looks like necessarily, or they've never seen it. They don't really have any experience with it.
On top of processing the lack of support from her family back home in Memphis, Trish was also processing the changes happening to her body and dealing with a toxic work environment. The stress of it all took its toll.
After I got pregnant, I feel like it was just compounded because I gained weight. Like the physical changes of pregnancy really took a toll on me. And my job had me I had to walk a lot. I had to lift things, nothing that would be too heavy or stressful for a non-pregnant person. But for a pregnant person, I was just like, yeah, this ain't gonna work. And like I said, my job was just a really sucky place to work. And nobody cared that I was pregnant. They said they did, there's a lot of lip service, congratulations. Oh, don't lift anything over your head. But also, or we're not going to give you any other accommodations. Like they gave me a stool so I could sit and do my job. Like I was processing documents and checks. That was part of my job. And so they gave me a stool so that I can sit and do that. But other than that, my workload didn't change. I was still expected to perform as if I wasn't pregnant.
A study published in 2015 by Harvard Business School confirmed what many Black folks already know to be true. Black expectant mothers face greater expectations to work than white mothers because of deep-rooted stereotypes about who should provide labor. But that's a whole other conversation for another day, y'all. In order to give birth at home in Texas, Trish knew she needed a midwife. And not just any midwife. Trish needed a midwife who could support her physically and emotionally, since she and her husband's families were so far away.
And I found her on Instagram. I just typed in Black Midwife, DFW. I typed in a bunch of hashtags and her picture popped up and I saw her face and I was like, I like the way she looks. I'm going to click her page. And I clicked her page and I was scrolling. There wasn't a lot there. And there's something just about her smile, just the way she looked. She looked like I could trust her. And so one day I was at work and on my lunch break, I said, I'm just going to call her. I'm just going to call her and see what she says. Because she may not even be taking clients right now. So I called her and I was like, hey, I'm pregnant and I need a Black midwife. And I want that Black midwife to be you. And she agreed to meet me. She was super, super gracious, super nice. And at that point, I was 4 weeks pregnant. She came to our house and she had a birth, a whole presentation for us. We had childbirth education in my living room. She was very hands-on with making sure that we were prepared. And even though she didn't want me to dwell on what would happen if something went wrong, she made sure that I was informed about what that would look like if I had to go to the hospital. And she just told me that, she wouldn't technically be operating as my midwife if we had to go to a hospital, but she would still be there with me. Would be my advocate, and she would be operating more as like a birth coach or a doula. And so she told me, just for safe measure, I want you to pack a bag just in case we have to transfer, but I also want you to stick that bag way, way in the back of your closet and don't think about it. And she encouraged me to like use essential oils, things that will help me relax, because I didn't have a lot of physical familial support. Yeah, she was really encouraging. And she also made a point to check on my spouse, to ask him how he was doing and what he needed out of the process. And he's a sort of a cucumber. So he was like, oh, no, I'm fine. I don't need much. I just want to support her. But she never stopped asking him. Every appointment, she made a point to ask him if he had any questions, if he had any concerns.
Trish's midwife, Laquita, sounds like a dream. I just think it's amazing she found her on Instagram. Between her doula training and finding the right midwife, Trish felt confident about giving birth at home. But when it came down to it, there was no amount of books or training that could prepare her for her pregnancy.
So early pregnancy was very easy. I was glowy. I wasn't tired. My first trimester, I was living my best life. My second trimester is when all hell broke loose. I had morning sickness in my first trimester and nausea. But during my second trimester, I threw up all the time. Like, there were some days I could not keep a meal down, and I started getting dizzy. And so every time I would see my midwife, she would ask me, how are you feeling physically? And I would tell her, basically, I think I'm dying. And I was promised glowing, and I was promised like the picture of Beyonce pregnant, like wasn't no flowers blooming, honey. Like I was just throwing up, hungry, and exhausted all the time. And then my workplace was sort of toxic, so it really wasn't lending anything to the experience. Like I was working, I'm throwing up, I'm tired. And she was very proactive about my sickness, like with like ginger tea. And she gave me a lot of good suggestions, but those hormones was boxing me, and there was just nothing that could be done.
Only one thing helped to settle Trish's stomach: soda.
I was drinking Dr. Peppers and Cokes and Pepsis and soda waters. And she asked me like how my water intake was. And I was like, does carbonated water count? And she's like, yes and no, it's water, but because you have a problem with your iron absorption right now, you really should kind of lay off. And I did for like 2 days, but I was so nauseous that I just kept drinking it because it was the only thing that made me feel better. And she never once like made me feel bad about it. Her motto was just, you have to do what you have to do to make yourself feel better. And I'm going to support you, whatever that looks like, as long as like the baby's healthy and you're healthy overall. Drink your soda water. Just make sure you're taking your iron supplement and getting your vitamin C.
Weeks away from their December 28th due date, Trish and Eli started to have more frequent appointments with Laquita.
So one day she came, and I think I was about 39 weeks pregnant, and she did my measurements. I asked her how much she thought the baby weighed. And she goes, if I had to guess, I would guess about 8 pounds. And I was like, what? Don't tell me that. Please don't tell me that. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm just thinking my poor vagina. Please don't say that. And she was like, yeah, he's healthy and you've been doing good. And I was like, okay. And I knew other women who were pregnant around the same time as me. And I just remember everybody giving birth. And I was just like, oh, congratulations. Me next. But almost 2 weeks after my due date, I had still not given birth. And I was pissed about it. Like, I was just walking around with an attitude. I was so hot. I was so big. And I couldn't take it. And she was just constantly encouraging me, like, the baby's going to come when he's supposed to come. And you want him to stay in as long as possible. But I was not trying to hear that. I was like, I don't want him to stay in as long as possible. Like, if he can be outside the womb, I want him outside the womb. I don't want him to get extra time. I don't want to throw up anymore. I want to eat food again. I want a cheeseburger. And she was just like, it's going to be okay. He's going to come. It's going to be over before you know it.
As much as we all love a good plan, there just simply aren't any fixed schedules or calendar invites for birth. Trish's baby was going to come when he was ready, which was right on time.
So on the 7th of January, it was like 11:30 at night. And that day, like, I was incessant, like looking like for any little sign that I could be in labor. Like, I'm Googling constantly. My toe itches. Is this a sign of labor? Like, everything was like a sign of labor to me. So finally on that day, I started feeling like little twinges, like my period was about to start. And then over the course of the day, they started to get like a little bit more intense. The day progressed, and around 11:30 that night, I remember telling my husband, I think I need to go to sleep because I'm probably gonna wake up in labor.
Trish woke up the next morning to full-on contractions. She was in early labor.
So I text my midwife. I'm like, hey, I think it's happening. And she's like, okay, I just want you to relax and, get on your birthing ball and get your playlist and try to get some sleep and like let things happen naturally. So around 4:30, they started to come at closer together. Like, I could time them. Like, I knew I was going to get one every 5 to 8 minutes. And so she told me to call her when they got that close. And so she came, and I was in pain at that point, but I wasn't inconsolable. So she checked me and I wasn't that dilated. And she was like, well, I'm going to set up and then I'm going to go home and I want you to just continue to labor. You're only at about a 2.5 to a 3. So you're not even in active labor yet. And I'm like, woo, okay, not in active labor. But I'm still thinking, because like I've been studying and I'm like, okay, most first-time moms are only in labor for about 12 hours. So in my mind, I was mentally prepared for a 12-hour labor. And I'm just knowing that within the next couple of hours, within the next 6 or so hours, I'm going to have a baby.
Trish was only 2.5 centimeters dilated. She needed to be at 10 to push. Laquita returned the next morning once Trish entered active labor.
What I remember most is the sun going down and then coming back up on me and thinking to myself, what have I done? And so I labor, and some of the contractions were so painful. I constantly had my husband doing counter pressure on my back. I can't even describe the pain. Like, it was awful. Every contraction, I needed support. And I had to basically will myself into like different positions. I had done all the reading, and I was like watching birth stories and like doula diaries so that I could see women in labor, see how they were coping, but nothing could prepare me for coping with contractions. And it was just bad. Like, at one point, I just refused to get up off the bed. I just laid there and screamed through contractions. Like, I didn't want to stand. I did not want to bounce on that damn ball. I did not want to sit over I didn't want to do anything but just lay there and just go to the upper room. I was so tired and I was still throwing up. And so I think the reason why my labor was so hard was because I was exhausted. I had already been throwing up throughout the duration of my pregnancy. And then I was here in active labor, still throwing up. Like, I couldn't keep even water down. It was so bad. So my doula got here a little bit after my midwife, and she came in and she saw me laying like across the bed. She got really close to my face because at that point I was checked out. I wasn't listening to my midwife. I was not listening to my husband. I was just content to lay in the bed and suffer, even though in hindsight, my labor was stalling because I was being stubborn. Like, I was just laying there. I wasn't active. I wasn't moving. I was just laying there and hollering, basically. She was really calm. And I can't remember what she said exactly, but it was something to the tune of, you got to get up because we're about to have this baby. So you need to move and you need to try to drink some water, even if it doesn't stay down.
Trish's doula brought new energy to the room, and it allowed her to focus and get her mind right.
They blew up the birth pool and I was able to get in a couple times. And I said to myself, when I give birth, I want to be quiet and I want to be graceful. But once I hit transition, I was not trying to be graceful. I was not trying to be quiet. I was trying to get this baby out. I turned into a different person. Like, I was screaming. And I looked at my husband at one point and I was like, I don't know if I could do this. I don't know if I'm strong enough. And I was like, y'all got to call the ambulance. Y'all got to take me because I can't do it. And I was like, I want some morphine. And I was just losing my mind. I was just saying anything. And I remember nobody responding. I might as well have been talking to a brick wall. And so my midwife excused herself from the room. And she was like, I'm just going to let you guys have the room so you can talk to your wife. And my husband was like, you know you don't want to go to the hospital. Because when you go to the hospital, the first thing they're going to do is hook you up to an IV. And you don't even like fluorescent lights. And then you're not going to be able to eat at all. And I was thinking to myself, why is he talking to me like this? I'm in labor, okay? You're supposed to be supporting me. And he was like, this is what you said you wanted. And so this is what we're going to do. So you just got to hang on for a little bit longer. He's almost here.
Shortly after the pep talk from her husband, Laquita told Trish that her cervix was fully dilated. She was finally about to meet her baby boy.
They said I pushed for an hour, but it felt shorter. Like that was the only part of my birth that felt like it took no time, because every time I got the opportunity to push, I pushed with every single contraction, because at that point I was like, I'm done. This baby is coming. I'm tired of him being in here. I'm tired of being in pain. And my midwife told me, she said, you can take a break. You don't have to push with every contraction. And I'm like, yes, I do. And I'm going to. And I was pushing on hands and knees. I remember feeling like the ring of fire, and my midwife kind of like being watchful. And at that point, my body was sort of contracting and pushing involuntarily. So it was really less me and more just the fact that it was time. And so I pushed. I felt the need to push, and I pushed. And I don't feel like it was a productive push, but like the next wave of contraction that I felt, my body sort of did it for me. And he just slid out. My husband caught him in the water and they placed him on my chest, and I was done. And I thought I would cry, but I was just kind of like similar to when I found out I was pregnant. I was just kind of like, okay, I did it. And I just kept saying, wow, I can't believe I did it. It was almost like I was outside of my body a little bit. I was like, I just had a baby in my dining room, in the pool, and here he is. He's like kind of purple and slimy, and this is the person that's been kicking my belly button for like 10 months. I was completely like awestruck at what I had done, even though I planned to do it. After he was born, like I felt like immediate relief, and we did skin to skin contact, and we stayed in the pool for about 20 minutes maybe. So when we got from the pool to the bed, the first thing I did, I said, can you hold him up for me? Can I see him? And I saw him, and he was gorgeous. He was like the most gorgeous thing I ever saw. And it's like, I knew he was going to be cute. I knew he was going to be cute because it's a baby, but I wasn't prepared. And I was just thinking, wow, I made that. I made that in my uterus. I made it myself. And he did skin to skin contact with his dad. And I was getting stitches, and I was just like staring at the ceiling like, wow, you just had a whole baby. You had a whole baby at home and you didn't die. You had a whole baby at home and you didn't die. Wow. Wow.
Wow, indeed. Childbirth ain't no joke. It also reminds us that new families need all the support they can get during the transition, whether that's from birth workers, family, or friends and neighbors. Luckily, Trish and Eli had a great team around them. On Capitol Hill, Representative Adams is working to make sure that Black birthing parents everywhere can also get the support they need.
Well, the Black Maternal Health Caucus is now about 1 year old. We have over 100 members in our caucus. I launched this caucus with my colleague from Illinois, Lauren Underwood, who also had some similar concerns. We launched this caucus because of the concerns that we have about what we believe is a public health crisis in this country, with so many Black women who are 4 times more likely to die from preventable pregnancy and complications, more so than other women of other races. And so we wanted to do a couple of things. First of all, to expand the knowledge base and educate not only our public, but members of our Congress, our staff, but then to get together to formulate legislation that would be helpful to address this issue. And we have been successful in the sense that we not only have Black women in the caucus, but we have men as well of all races. And actually, it's bipartisan as well. So we want to make sure that women don't die and that they give birth and that they're able to raise their children and the children will not be left without their moms. So we found as we have gotten together with many of our stakeholders that not only is it preventable, but that there are many things that we think we can do right now.
Earlier this year, Representatives Adams and Underwood, Vice Presidential nominee Kamala Harris, and over 100 bipartisan members of the Black Maternal Health Caucus drafted the Black Maternal Health Momnibus Act of 2020. The Momnibus is a collection of 9 individual bills that fill existing gaps in legislation to better protect Black parents.
It is a historic piece of legislation, and it targets the failures in maternal health, but it also addresses pervasive maternal health disparities through solutions that are culturally competent and that are proven effective. And what it does, it not only makes investments in community-based organizations that are leading the charge to protect moms by maternal mental health conditions and substance abuse disorders. Some of these bills support doulas and perinatal health workers. It addresses some of the social determinants of health, like housing and transportation and nutrition. But it also supports research and training programs, bias and racism training programs. And it also gives us an opportunity to actually not only do the research, but to be able to formulate some kind of data, gathering the data, because we found that there has not been an extensive, exclusive study in many years. And so we're trying to be intentional about centering the voices of Black women and ensuring that Black women-led organizations were consulted. They have been participating with us. It basically says unequivocally that Black moms matter.
It really is that simple. Black moms, Black parents, Black families matter.
Yes. And throughout her entire pregnancy, Laquita and Eli constantly reminded Trish how much she mattered and that her decision to have a home birth mattered. And just as important, they honored her wishes for her birthing experience every step of the way.
And their support didn't end after Elijah was born.
So he was weighed, and she gave us all of our aftercare instructions, and then they cleaned up everything. Like the 2 days after I gave birth, my house was like nothing ever happened. Like it just looked like a regular house. Like you wouldn't have thought that I was just in here pushing out a whole human. And then she came, 48 hours after to check on us, and then all of my appointments up until he was 6 weeks. So she was with me for a long time. The day of my 6-week appointment, like I almost wanted to cry because I was like, I'm not ready to be without you. I texted her about every little thing. And whenever I text her, she hit me back immediately. So the thing that I had was my midwife trusted me to make the best decision for me. And I think what's missing is I don't think that women, particularly Black women, are always listened to. And I also don't think they're treated like they have any type of expertise with their own bodies, especially in the medical field. Like a lot of doctors, a lot of people have the white coat syndrome. And it's like, things stop being suggestions and they start kind of being like commands. And if you do anything differently, you're considered like difficult or like an outlier. I think that people inherently know what's best for them. And I think the same thing extends to when you're pregnant. Like you can feel when you don't feel well. And you 9 times out of 10 know what will make you feel better. So I definitely think care should involve a lot more active listening and a lot more treating women like experts at their own bodies, because I think that women are experts at their own bodies, and that doesn't stop just because you got pregnant. I told my husband, and I was joking, but I was like laughing, but very serious. I was like, I want my son to be born, and the first thing I want him to see is a Black woman's face. That's the first thing I want him to see. And that's why I was intentional about getting a Black midwife and having a Black doula and becoming a Black doula and supporting Black women and improving birth outcomes. Because I feel like it's a space that was ours, that we inhabited, and it has never not been ours. I just think it's magical work. I just think there's something magical about Black women taking care of other Black women. And I'm so glad that I was able to experience that.
Trish is so right. The way Black women show up for one another is a story as old as time itself.
It sure is. From Capitol Hill to Texas, California to Connecticut, and everywhere in between, as mothers, grandmothers, aunties, caregivers, birth workers, medical providers, and even as reporters and storytellers, Black women, Black queer and trans trailblazers have led the fight for our collective reproductive health and freedom from day one.
And at the end of the day, our work affirms what we already know to be true. Black parents are and deserve to be in control of their bodies and their reproductive choices.
Absolutely. Those of us who love and care about the Black birthing parents in our lives, we have to be there for our people. We have to ensure that they know their options. We have to make sure that their wishes, dreams, and desires during their birthing journeys are honored. And we have to ensure that they get to experience the abundance of joy, love, and affirmations that Trish and Eli felt bringing Elijah into this world. They deserve that. We all deserve that.
The impact of this fight for better care and outcomes for Black birthing parents will ripple far beyond our community. When this country puts real investments in collaborative care models for Black birthing parents, and we mean money and laws, everyone will benefit.
And now that we're at the end of this season, in the midst of a deadly pandemic, with a major election on the horizon, and the largest movement for Black lives and justice this country has ever seen, it's time for us all to do this work.
For starters, you can support Black Mamas Matter Alliance with a donation. Their member organizations provide and advocate for community-based care across the country. You can also call your congressperson to support the Black Maternal Health Momnibus Act and demand your local and state politicians prioritize Black perinatal care legislatively.
And finally, this November, when you head to the polls, vote for candidates, especially locally, who prioritize the health and well-being of Black birthing parents and their babies.
Natal is a collab between You Had Me at Black and The Woodshaw. Subscribe, rate, and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts.
Visit natalstories.com for exclusive content, like our community blog and resource hub, and donate to our production fund while you're there.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Natal Stories, and join the Natal group on Facebook to keep the conversation going.
You can find the links to everything in the show notes.
Special thanks to Black Mamas Matter Alliance,
the University of Southern California Annenberg Center for Health Journalism, and our reporting mentor, Catherine Stifter,
the Economic Hardship Reporting Project,
our sponsor, Coddle,
and Natal advisor, Adiza Egan. Natal is executive produced by us, Martina Abraham Zalunga and Gabrielle Horton.
Tiara Darnell is the editor who puts it all together.
Jody Williams and Taylor Hosking, our producers, get the stories.
And our sound designer and engineer, Jess Jupiter, hooks it all the way up.